Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Orlando is the premier Halloween event in all of the United States, and I really don't think it's close. But that doesn't mean that it's not confusing. There are a lot of nuances. And so now you may be wondering, what makes me qualified to be your guide for this year's event? And there's a couple of things. Number one, I've been going to the event for way longer than I care to mention right now, probably too much for my own good. And number two, which I would argue is the most important factor of all of this, I am wearing all black. And that makes me an expert. Okay, that's enough of that. Let's go inside. I could start this video off by talking about what Halloween Horror Nights is, but if you clicked on this video, I think you're just doing some planning. And so you probably have an idea of what the event is, so I'm just gonna give a quick synopsis of the event. So HHN typically consists of 10 haunted houses, 5 scare zones, a couple of shows, and then food themed to this year's event. The haunted houses consist of both originals and IPs, and what I mean by originals is just original stories or plots that Universal themselves has come up with and put into a haunted house, and then IPs is just intellectual properties, so things that we know and love. Like this year there's Ghostbusters, we've had Stranger Things, The Weeknd, just pop culture references or horror movies, horror adjacent movies that we've all come to love. This year's lineup consists of 10 unforgettable houses, such as... I'm just kidding. I thought it'd be funny to call them unforgettable and then pull up a phone like I had forgotten all of them, but there are some houses that I'm really excited about. You've got Ghostbusters, Insidious, Quiet Place, and then some of the originals, Slaughter Cinema 2. Can't wait to see that. That's like a return of a favorite from, I believe it was 2018. And then you've got like a Goblin's house and a museum house that I am really hoping is heavily themed around Ben Affleck's hit blockbuster film, Not at the Museum. There's not like a giant Easter Island statue in there chewing bubblegum. I don't know what we're doing here. But all jokes aside, I am excited about this year's lineup. I think there's some really cool concepts, and I'm excited to see them all. If this is your first time at the event, you may be wondering, like, how do you find the houses? And it's pretty easy to do so. So they're typically in the same locations, although they might switch things up here or there. But there will be, I don't know even what to call it. It's like a sign with a TV that's the wait time, and then like it'll mark where you enter, because all the houses are actually backstage, so you won't see the houses in the parks, but you walk backstage to go to the houses. So just look for those markers with wait times that are probably 120 minutes, and you have found yourself a house. And then you have scare zones, and I have sat here for the last like 5 to 10 minutes trying to think about how to describe scare zones, and the only thing that really came to me is they are zones in which you can get scared. They are just areas that are scattered throughout the park where there are scare actors that are themed. They're kind of like a haunted house without the house. So they are just a haunted. That's what we're going to go with. So if you're new to the event, or if you just want a refresher of where the scare zones are, they're going to be hard to miss. You're going to walk right through them. But the locations are Hollywood Boulevard, Central Park, and then you've got this one back here in San Francisco, like where Fast and Furious lets out, and then in New York. And I know I said 5 scare zones, but the one at the beginning of the park, it used to be 2 separate scare zones. So there was like one right when you walked in, sort of in between the 2 Minions rides now, and then the one in Hollywood. But now that first one, it's kind of just like right when you walk in. They call it 2 scare zones, but since Minions is there, they don't have the scare zone in the same spot. It's just like one big scare zone, but we call it 2. But regardless, you can't miss them. You're going to walk through them all night to get to the houses. And then I mentioned shows, and yes, I said shows plural, even though this year they've only announced one, which is Nightmare Fuel Nocturnal Circus at the back of the park, back there in the old Fear Factor stage. But the reason I said shows plural is because sometimes you have like a random street show up. Like last year we had the Megan show. In years past there's been a Lagoon show, even though I don't think that's happening this year. So yeah, typically shows plural, this year show. And then there is that themed food. Oh, how I love themed food. I have a PSL running through my veins as we speak. Anything pumpkin or Halloween themed, I can't get enough of it. If you just put some like purple and orange and green sprinkles on something, I'm gonna buy it. I don't care if I have that thing at home. I will buy the spooky version, the spookified version, if you will. It just doesn't matter. Like, I don't care. I don't care if the Captain Crunch tastes the same. Oh, it turns my milk green now? I'll have 2 of them. But then to go along with the themed food, you have themed food booths. And there are some amazing ones this year, specifically the Ghostbusters one. I am a huge Ghostbusters fan, so I can't wait to see the food that pops up at that booth. Like, I would love some, I don't know, a Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, something to eat. And if I can't get an Ecto Cooler, Universal, what are you doing? Like, give me an Ecto Cooler. I might lose my mind if I'm not walking around this event with a green drink. And now let's talk about the elephant in the room. This is Little Boo. He is a somewhat important character in HHN lore, and he is also my microphone. He's not actually my microphone. I have my microphone attached to him, which I did for a couple of reasons. One, I thought it looked cool. Good theming. But 2, several of you were very upset that I was holding the microphone in my last video. I have never heard anyone be upset about someone holding a pumpkin, so here's my compromise. So while I was sitting there recording that, my right leg fell asleep, which is why I am awkwardly walking around, probably kind of stumbling. My right leg feels like I have static from a television set all inside of it. So I'm going to try to find a seat somewhere to talk about tickets. This may come as a shock to you. Actually, it probably won't. Halloween Horror Nights is a separately ticketed event, which means that your daytime ticket to the parks won't get you access to HHN, but there are some benefits to having daytime access. It's a thing called Stay and Scream. We'll talk about that later. Some people get confused about it, but I think it's really important. So we'll just cover that in its own little thing. But that also means that your Daytime Express does not work at the event either, and that includes the Daytime Express that you can get from staying at one of the 3 hotels here at Universal. So if you stay at Hard Rock, Royal Pacific, or Portofino, that express only works for the parks and not for Halloween Horror Nights. The sun has decided to grace us, and I hate that for me. So there are a couple of different ways to do tickets for Halloween Horror Nights. You have single night tickets, which this year start at $82.99 at the time of recording this video. It changes daily, so by the time you're watching this, it could be totally different. And then they have multi-night tickets, which is just a ticket that gets you in for multiple nights of the event. And so the main difference between these tickets is just how many days they get you in. Like the Rush of Fear, it gets you in most of September. The Frequent Fear Pass gets you in Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. The Frequent Fear Plus Pass gets you in Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, Sundays. And then the Ultimate Frequent Fear Pass, you guessed it, you add Saturdays. So it gets you in every single day of the event. So I could sit here and pretend that I know like the perfect ticket for you, but I don't, because I don't know how many days you're going to be here. There's a lot of variables, but you can just like price it out and figure that out. But I will give you a little pro tip. Buy your tickets ahead of time, because if you wait till you get to Universal and buy them at the gate, they are significantly more expensive, like $10 to $20 per person more expensive. I love my friends at Orlando Informer, and I love working with them, so I always suggest buying your tickets from them ahead of time. It's always simple and easy, and it will always save you money. Now, if you're on the website, you may be noticing a few other little add-ons that you can get. One of them that I mentioned was Express Pass. At this point, the only Express Pass that you're getting is a single night Express Pass, and those start off at a hefty price of $179.99 per person per night. So yeah, use those sparingly. I mean, I don't know your financial situation. Use them however you want. I would be using them sparingly. And you may be noticing a couple of other options, one of them being Unmasking the Horror Tour. That is just like a daytime walkthrough of some of the houses. They have a 3 and 6 house tour. If you're not into spooky stuff, or if you're wanting to test the waters with Halloween Horror Nights, I think it's a great way to do that. You get to see like all the Easter eggs and hidden stuff inside the houses that you won't see walking through them at night. So I always enjoy doing them. I do them like later in the season after I've done some walkthroughs. But like I said, if you're afraid or you're wanting to test Halloween Horror Nights out, I think that's a great way to do it. And then you have the lovely RIP tours. Yes, RIP, Universal's play on the VIP tour that they do during the daytime. The RIP tour is like a guided tour through the event. They take you to the front of the line of all the houses. Some light refreshments are included, but it comes at a hefty price. I think, once again, at the time of recording this video, the cheapest night that I have found is $370 per person. I'm not saying it's not worth it. I have done RIP tours in the past, and I always have a great time. My thing is, I come to the event so frequently, like I live 20 minutes away. I come so much that I can't justify it. But the nights that I've done RIP tours, they're a lot of fun. Like, there's the regular line, the express line, and then the I walk to the front, and the RIP tours are just the walk to the front. They save a lot of steps because these houses are like way back off the beaten trail. And yeah, like if you just want to save your feet, the RIP tour is the way to do it. They're fun, they're just very expensive. I almost forgot. There is one other type of ticket you may see on there, and that is the Scream Early ticket. Once again, that is about Stay and Scream, so we're going to talk about that later. Hello, I have made it over here to San Francisco. So this is the Blumhouse Scare Zone that we were talking about earlier. I can't really tell if you can see any of it. I'm pretty far away from the camera, but this is it. I wanted to go over a couple little things, pro tips, if you will. I have some videos that I will link like in the description for all kinds of tips, but these are things that I think everyone should know. So if I'm going to do a guide, I think they are worth including. 1, wear the comfiest shoes that you can. I know it seems like it's Halloween, you know, let's wear some boots, let's dress up. You will regret it. Like I talked about earlier, the houses are miles. Okay, not miles. They are pretty far away from like the main park area. I've talked about it before. I have walked upwards of 50,000 steps during the event, during a day at Halloween Horror Nights. So wear comfy shoes, and also probably bring a change of socks. I have found that bringing the change of socks changes everything. Like midway through the night, if I just change the socks, it's like a second wind. There's a helicopter. And number 2, which can kind of go with number 1 because that change of socks can come in handy here too. Prepare for rain. And I don't mean just be like, oh, I'll bring a poncho. No, prepare for rain. Bringing a poncho is a good start, but just realize that the event's expensive, and there are no refunds. Like, it's going to rain several times throughout the event, and there are going to be times that it seems like a washout. It doesn't matter. The event goes on. It's like the USPS, but it does happen on Sundays. There is a tradition on opening night for it to just monsoon. But opening night's not the only time that it rains. I don't know if you can tell right now. It is getting dark, A, because it's getting later in the day, but B, because there's some rain on its way. And this is about the time that the event would be starting. So yeah, just come as prepared as you can for rain. And as heavy as you think the rain is going to be, prepare for it to be even heavier than that. You may notice that it is significantly darker than the last time that I talked to the camera, and that is because we have arrived at the darkest part of today's video, Stay and Scream. Actually, it's just because it's gotten darker outside, and Stay and Scream really isn't that confusing. There are just a few things you need to know. Is it really about to rain? Yep, it's gonna rain. This is getting ridiculous. Like, I've been here like 3 or 4 times trying to film, and this is a bad one. You remember earlier when I was talking about making sure you were prepared for rain at HHN? This is what will happen if you don't finish watching this video. I'm just kidding. I'm going to finish this at home. I forgot an umbrella. So I'm sitting here telling you to be prepared for rain, and I don't listen to my own advice. I got absolutely drenched walking to the car, so here we are the next day, finishing up Stay and Scream. If you want to know how complicated Stay and Scream is, do you see all these boxes? They are full of documents that we're going to have to go over one by one so that you understand Stay and Scream. Actually, I just moved, and so these are all the boxes. Not all of them. These are some of the boxes that I haven't unpacked. It's like a lot of Halloween decorations. It's one of my favorites. Yeah, so Stay and Scream. It's really not that complicated. People like to overcomplicate it, and there's like some stuff that you may think that you need, whatever. We're going to simplify it. By the end of this, you'll be a Stay and Scream Pro. So before we get into Stay and Scream, we need to talk about when the event starts. And it starts at 6:30 p.m. every single night, and it runs all the way to 2 a.m. the next morning. So why is that important? Well, it's important because Stay and Scream is basically just EPA for Halloween Horror Nights. It's a way to get to the event early and start going through houses before the event actually starts for daytime guests. So with Stay and Scream, there will be designated areas throughout the park where you have to check in before 5 p.m. They are basically just holding areas for the event. So there will be like 3 or 4 different Stay and Scream locations, and each of those locations will be holding you for a different house or a different set of houses. So you'll basically be queuing up for a house at like 5 p.m. starting at 5 p.m. But there are a couple of requirements to get you into Stay and Scream. Number one, and it may seem painfully obvious, but you do have to have a Halloween Horror Nights ticket. And number two, and this is where I think people get confused, Universal sells what is called a Scream Early ticket. That is just a ticket that gets you into the parks, I think at like 3 p.m. and it allows you to stay in Stay and Scream. However, you do not need a Scream Early ticket if you have one of two things, and that is an annual pass that gets you into the parks on the day of the event, or two, just a ticket for daytime operations. You remember earlier in the video when I said there were some benefits to having a daytime ticket? This is what I'm talking about. It will get you access to Stay and Scream the night of Halloween Horror Nights. Me, for example, I have an annual pass that gets me into the parks every day of the year if I want to go. I have the Premier Annual Pass. I never need a Scream Early ticket. Like I'm just never going to need that because I have access to the parks, which gets me access to Scream Early. Even I'm saying things wrong, Scream Early, I meant Stay and Scream. I can see why people get confused here, but basically, let's break it down. Let's make it real simple. If you have a ticket to the parks, you don't need it. If you don't have a ticket to the parks and you want to do Stay and Scream, you need to buy one. There we go. In my opinion, I love Stay and Scream. I think it's a great way to get a couple of extra houses in because seriously, they will start letting people go from Stay and Scream at like 5:30, 5:45, and you'll go ahead and be doing houses while people are still waiting to get in the front gate. And the thing about the front gate is if you try to get there like right as the event starts, you may be like, oh, well, I'm getting there at 6:30. Probably not. You're probably actually getting into the parks at like 7:30. The crowds get massive. I mean, I have been backed all the way back up into like City Walk. It's just insane. Parking's a nightmare. It's all crazy because the event is so popular. Like it's nothing that Universal's doing. It is just such a popular event. So if you only have like a night or a couple of nights and you're wanting to make the most out of it, I absolutely recommend Stay and Scream. There will be signs that tell you where the Stay and Scream locations are, and they are typically in the same area. So you'll have one in like Central Park. New York is a big one. They started doing Richter's. And this year, I do believe there is a very big change. So for years, one of the most popular Stay and Scream locations has been Springfield. You could hang out there, get some food, get some drinks, enjoy your time, and then you would have access to like some of those houses at the back of the park. However, this year, there is one of those signs that we talked about that generally marks a house. And I do not think that there will be Stay and Scream in Springfield this year. Instead, it has been confirmed by Universal that they will be checking people in at Lombard's. So I think we will move the Stay and Scream location from Springfield over to Lombard's, and that will be like the new area where we have a Stay and Scream, which kind of works out because the HHN bar is right there. Last year it was the place where you could meet David S. Pumpkin. I don't know if he's making a return this year, but I think it makes a lot of sense. I will miss Springfield. That was probably the Stay and Scream that I did the most, but Lombard's makes a lot of sense. Anyways, I think that's about it. If you have any additional questions, I think you should sign up for this email list. I send out all kinds of information on Universal and the parks that is extremely helpful, and I will be sending out a Halloween Horror Nights guide with a little checklist to make sure that you have the best night possible. But yeah, I think you are all prepared. I'll see you guys in the fog. Bye-bye.